And we teach them, we don't value people who get into things. We don't have time for your questions because there's already something that an adult that is smarter than you and knows best for you has put into place for you that you need to jump through in order for us to love you now. That's what we tell every 5-year-old who enters a classroom. That sounds like so terrible. I don't think anyone is actually thinking those thoughts, but it only matters what is perceived by the child. And we don't know what's perceived by the child because nobody asks kids anything. Right? And it's only when you start talking to kids and you see their tears and their stress come out where you're like, oh my gosh, like I need to spend every waking minute of my entire life making this better for them because they are suffering.
Hello and welcome back to the Hannah Frankman podcast. On today's episode, I'm speaking with Kaity Broadbent. Kaity is the chief evangelist at Prenda, a network of microschools that was launched in Arizona and is now expanding into other states that also have ESA options for students. All 4 of Kaity's children are attendees of Prenda Microschools. And in today's episode, Kaity and I go deep on the culture of Prenda. We talk about how Prenda establishes a culture of valuing curiosity and valuing learning and placing an emphasis on the efforts put into the learning process rather than the outcomes or the achievements that standardized testing often puts all of its emphasis on. We talk about the academic tools that Prenda uses to develop its curriculum. We talk about how they help reignite curiosity in their students after perhaps spending years inside of the public education system being taught through osmosis that curiosity isn't cool. And we talk about the process that families go through when they're launching a Prenda microschool, all the way from first applying to be a microschool and learn more information, all the way through to actually opening their doors. Kaity is deeply passionate about the soul and the hearts of the children that she works with, and that passion comes through very strongly in today's episode, and I hope you enjoy listening. Kaity Broadbent, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me.
I'm so excited we're finally doing this. You are also an education podcast host, and you're deeply involved with Prenda, which I've talked about on the podcast before, but I'm so excited to have someone from Prenda back on the show and to have you finally here. I want to go super in the weeds on Prenda today and talk about all of the awesome stuff you're up to because it's very cool. We're in start of school season as we're recording this. First day of school is when for you guys?
My kids started last week, so we've been into it for a little bit. Or maybe my boys started 2 weeks ago. Our microschools have staggered starts, so yeah.
What's the range of start dates? Like, is there some kind of structure to how microschool leaders choose a start date, or is it very personalized and varied?
Yeah, so our recommendation is that they follow generally the school district within which they live, because they likely are going to have a lot of our microschools have some families in microschools, some families in traditional schools, some kids homeschooling, like all in the same family. They're finding unique, solutions for all their different kids. So generally, they'll try to kind of stick with whatever's going on in the school district that they live in. But honestly, it's mostly like a conversation between the families. Once those kids enroll and you're kind of building that relationship with the guide, even down to like what time do you want school to start is a discussion between families. It's like, oh, like I have another drop off. Like, that's okay. Like we can wait 10 minutes, like we'll start 10 minutes later. Like it's very accommodating and very flexible per microschool. And that microschool guide is just making all of those calls with their families at the local level.
You guys also have a bunch of schools opening this year, which is, as far as I can tell, standard fare for every new school year. You have new schools starting. How many schools do you guys have now?
Yeah, so they're still trickling in starting, so I think we'll run about 170 schools this year. About 60 of those will be new, right? It's like microschooling is so interesting because there is a lot more, like it's almost like homeschooling instead of like sending, like some years you homeschool and then sometimes it's like, oh, I'm going to put my kids in traditional school or whatever. Like there's a lot of flux in it. So we'll have guides start, they'll run microschools for a year, 2, 3, and they'll be like, okay, like my kids need something different, or like I am going to move on from this, or they'll take a break for a year and then they'll come back. And because we make it so easy to start a microschool, it's not like you've poured your like life savings into like buying a building or anything like that. Like we make it really easy for you to start. So it's also really easy to take a break and to like have this be a flexible part of kind of like your mom life or your educator life, like it ebbs and flows, and we want to support people in doing what's right for them at like in that season of their life. So we try to make it really flexible.
What is the process like for someone who is in the throes right now of launching their very first week of their very first micro school? What does your onboarding process look like? And then what does the ramp up to actually starting look like? Because I know you guys have tons of support structures in place to make it easier for a family than if they were just doing this on their own.
Yeah, that's such a good question. So, I mean, if you imagine any mom in any neighborhood or any teacher that's looking to do something different, thinking, okay, I'm going to start a school. Like there are probably 1,000 barriers in that person's way. And so Prenda aims to remove those barriers so more and more people can see like a hopeful path to that actually happening. And you'll see this, a lot of people like have this dream of starting a school, but it just feels so big that they never even take action on it a little bit, right? So we like to chunk that process up into a few different steps. And the first step that we actually have to like do is convincing people that they can actually do it, right? It's like this pie in the sky thing, like, oh, I'm just dreaming of this, like what my kids would have, or like what I would be able to become as an educator or a parent, or and they just feel like they can't do it. And so a lot of our early conversations with people are just encouraging them, right? Like you can do this. And maybe if there were actually 1,000 things in your way, maybe you really couldn't. But like with Prenda as a partner, there's maybe only 3 or 4 things in your way now. And we can handhold you to get you over those hurdles. A lot of them are mental hurdles. There are a few things that are actually physical hurdles that stop people, but 9 times out of 10, like we can get over those. So the first step is you literally click a button on our website that says Start My Microschool, which is, I want to talk about this for a minute because when we started in 2018, I was literally the crazy mom. I was already the crazy mom at the park because I was homeschooling. I was the only person I knew in like my area that was homeschooling. I had to like really reach for community and for support like around me. I had to drive a long ways to get my kids to hang out with other kids that homeschooled. I didn't have a lot of community around me that was homeschooling. Like that was a weird thing. And this wasn't even in like the 80s, guys. This was in 2018. Like homeschool's like on the rise, kind of like it's not completely outrageous to be homeschooling, but I still felt very like, oh, you're weird. And like the other moms were like, I don't even know how to talk to you because all of my conversation is about how terrible my children are and how I struggle to be around them and like all of these things. And I'm like, we just have different needs and different struggles. And like, I want to help you, but I don't know. It's just like, I felt really isolated. Anyways, so I was already weird because I was homeschooling. And then I was like triple weird because now I started talking about something called microschooling, which no one's ever heard of. And that did not make me very cool. But come COVID, I was real cool. Everyone wanted to talk to me about microschools during COVID. The first thing you do to start a microschool with Prenda is literally click a button that says Start My Microschool, which in 2018, you would not have been able to get 2 people to click on that button, right? Like no one knew what a microschool was. And like literally hundreds and hundreds of people click on that button every week now. Every week we'll have like, not even just click the button, but like they'll actually start an account with us and like start walking this path. On average, like in the summer, like it kind of ebbs and flows, but like in the summer when people are really starting to look at like, what are we going to do for school? What am I going to do for work? We'll have like upwards of 300 people start their microschool with us every week. Isn't that crazy? Wow. And like, that's like such a strong indicator of where the education direction is going and like where the demand is, where the hunger is coming from parents and from educators. And that in and of itself, like let alone like down the pipe, like how many people actually start microschools is one question. But just the fact that we can get so many hundreds of people to know what a microschool is and to want to click a button that says, yeah, I want to start one is like a huge win for the movement and just such an indicator of where education is going, right? So that's the first step, is clicking that button. There's a very long answer to your question.
Those numbers are crazy. I didn't realize it was that high, that much interest every single week. What are the determining factors in a family actually going all the way through the process and launching a school? If you're getting 300 applications a week and you're launching 60 to 70 new schools this fall,
it's a lot of trickle down.
What is it that makes a family stick with it versus what are some of the more common things you see that make a family say, oh, maybe this isn't the right move for us right now?
Well, I think a lot of it is they still are trying to understand what a microschool is. And some of those people don't really understand that they're starting a school. Some of them think like, oh, maybe I click this button to enroll in a school or make it, like some people get confused. So there's like, the 8% of people who are like, I shouldn't have clicked that button. But then the bulk of them know what a microschool is and are really interested in getting started. But then we hit this belief factor, right? Now the hurdle is find a location where you could meet with 5 to 10 kids and talk to their parents about like this being a good educational option for them. And that's where we hit the barrier of minds and hearts of parents. And I want to spend like a little bit of time sinking into this one because this is where we're seeing huge shift in the parental mindset and like what we want for our kids, right? And I like to think about any education option, homeschool, traditional school, hybrid school, whatever you're going to do, online school. It's kind of like a hypothesis, like you're hiring something to get you to a certain end, right? It's like, well, I want my kid to be like this. I want my kid to go to Harvard. I want my kid to be really fill in the blank, right? We all have these kind of hypotheses or visions for our kids, and then we make decisions based on what we think is going to help us get them there. So we're literally hiring something to help us do our job of raising whatever kind of human we have deemed to be the goal, right? But the thing is that not a lot of parents spend a lot of time thinking about this, right? Because going to school, putting your kids in is the norm. And they have so much social proof that this is the norm and that this makes your kids at least fine, that they're terrified to do something different. And I think COVID really helped parents be like, oh, I was forced to do something different and it wasn't that bad. And I actually kind of liked it a little bit. And I saw my kids, they were super healthy. And like I saw our family culture change, like all these things that they didn't even know were options to them to get intentional about, right? We've seen this huge wave of parents getting super intentional about what they want for their kids, how they want to parent their kids, what they want their relationships to look like, what they want their family culture to be like. So that is where we do a ton of work. That's why we run the Kindle podcast, why we do all of our like social on at Prenda Learn, like trying to help parents see like it is okay to want something different. You don't have to want your kid to jump through all the hoops and like just to earn a degree and something like that. That doesn't make you valuable as a parent necessarily. It doesn't make your kid successful in the world necessarily. Like these are all question marks. Whereas maybe like in the last generation or two, they were kind of like table stakes. Like, yeah, you graduate high school, you go to college, you get a job. It's like the data does not show that that is true. And I'm not being like, I don't think we should tell kids not to go to college or anything. Like, I just think that we should be intentional and not say, hey, it's only when you're on these train tracks that I subconsciously think make you a good kid, make you valuable, make me proud of you, make me proud to like tell other people, like my other friends, like what you're doing, you know? Like we brag about our kids who are getting into college and we don't brag about our kids who are sleeping on our couch still, right? But like maybe the kid that's sleeping on the couch is like has other qualities. And maybe, you know, it's just like we have this kind of single point of value that's the currency. And it's really unhealthy. And I think it's really the root of the youth mental health crisis right now. I was just actually, this is a huge tangent, so sorry, but I was just with a group of teenagers and I was talking to them about about stress, just like how they can feel less stress. And I had to give them like an introduction to read about me. And I just said like, I'm Kaity. I help people start schools that are less stressful and more fun. And all of these kids were just like silent and you could just feel them, like the stress in their body. Like that would be really nice. Like if school is more fun and it was less stressful, like all of them wanted that so bad. And we kind of went through this exercise about why their lives are stressful. All of those questions revolved around school. All of like, have you ever done like the ask why 5 times exercise?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was doing that with them. It's like, hey, why is school stressful? It's like, well, there's lots of expectations. Why are there lots of expectations? Well, because of grades or because of parents. And like, I don't want to disappoint my parents. And why don't you want to disappoint your parents? And then silence and then tears was the norm from these kids. It's like, because my value in school makes me valuable and loved at home. And that is how these kids are running their whole like mental schema around like, I am only valuable if I can do math and reading well. And if I have any other skills or ideas, like great, but we don't care because we only have time to get you through to jump through the hoops that make you valuable. Like that is the root cause of so much like stress for kids, poor mental health, anxiety, depression, suicide rates, disconnection between parents and kids, the whole idea that teenagers have to hate your parents, like that's normal. Like all of this is rooted in our beliefs, right? And so as we're going through the Prenda like path, it's like, oh, we're going to hit some pretty deep barriers right here, right? And we've got to do some really deep work, not like, oh, they wanted to know about the curriculum and I handed them this printout that listed our curriculum and then everything was fine. It's like, no. Like, what do you want for your kids? What do you want? What kind of human is the goal here? And I think when we reflect on that, what we come away with is we want our kids to be happy. We want our kids to be doing meaningful work in the world. We want our kids to have strong relationships, and we want our kids to be like dependable and reliable and to be able to take care of themselves and others, right? So then from that, we have to say, like, hey, is the thing that we're hiring really getting us there? And if you look at the data, it's like, hard no, right? We're not there. So many kids have poor mental health. The anxiety, suicide, depression rates are off the charts. And the academic performance, it's like, okay, we're sometimes we think we're trading like mental health for academic performance. Nope. Academic performance also terrible. So like, we're not even getting anything that we think we're signing up for, yet we persist because it's too scary to get off those train tracks and to do something that's different, because then as a parent, you're accountable for not making a normal choice. And that is terrifying. And I even experienced, like, I've homeschooled, like my kids, this is their 6th year in Prenda Microschools. Like I am off the beaten track hard. And I still have flashes of like, oh, that person at the park asked my kid a question or saw their handwriting and I feel judged. And like, I feel like I'm not doing a good job and maybe I need to question all of my life choices, right? So even being this far off the beaten path, like I can still get that fear going in my body. So like, it's way intense if you've never done anything different. But then I talk to these parents who have made the leap and they're like, night and day. My kid is a different person, right? Like our relationship is so much better. They are happy when they wake up. Like they are not irritable. Like they're excited to go to school again. Like it is when you can get the right belief. If you get the right belief, you can get the right action. And then if you get the right action, like so many things waterfall trickle down from that. But that's like the main hurdle we have to get people who start microschools over, because if you don't have someone like nudging you into a new belief system, a new influx of information, data, social proof, all of these things, you're just going to kind of recreate what you know on a smaller scale. If you're going to start a school, right? When we need to flip these things on their heads, and that's scary, and these people need support. And that's what we're here to do at Prenda.
That's so sad that kids think that their love and safety ties to their academic performance. That's so sad.
But I mean, look at every indicator.
Yeah, it's not an irrational conclusion to come to, because so much of the world is built around measuring you and measuring how you stack up against everyone else. And the school is your enforcer, but your parents are enforcing too. They're looking at your report cards and they're telling you how they feel about your performance, and they're rewarding you if you do well and punishing you if you don't. It is deep in the culture, even if you
Mm-hmm.
don't grow. It's so deep in the cultural milieu itself that even if you are not in a traditional school, you still have to work to separate yourself from this idea that your worth is the
Totally.
sum of your academic performance. And yet there is also a reason why we care about some of the academic markers.
Yeah.
Like, it's not that academic success doesn't matter. It matters very
Totally.
much, but it's dangerous when it becomes a piece of your self-esteem. And
Yeah.
maybe this is an interesting rabbit hole for us to go down, because part of what I'm really interested with Prenda is the fact that you're scaling this network of schools that are all in some ways highly independent, but in other ways they all have this collective bank of resources from you guys at Prenda to draw from. And I know that there's a lot of architecture that goes on behind the scenes to design all of that, which I would love to dig into with you. But I'm also very curious how you think about this problem that you've just described of kids feeling like their worth is tied to their academic performance, to the point that they're in tears thinking that if they disappoint their parents, they're going to be a failure, but at the same time still maintaining a culture where academic success is encouraged and celebrated and valued. How do you walk that line in the culture of an organization?
Yeah. So first off, like, we get here as parents because of fear, but also really because of love. It's like, wow, I want my kid to be successful. I want them to have a good job. I want them to be able, like, all of these things, you know, that we hope part of our vision. And the only way they'll ever listen to me is if I threaten them or reward them or punish them. That's just we have the most data in our parenting lives that's the thing that works. And we haven't had another thing modeled to us. So we think the only way, it's like, yes, they're going to hate school. Like, that's a given in this mindset, you know, like, yes, they're going to be afraid of me. That's a given in this mindset, but they're going to be successful. And that's my trade-off. And we're just saying, not that you don't have to make that trade-off. Like, you can get them to the same level of academic excellence. And I would say beyond that, like, one of my favorite things to say is, like, a child can always run faster than you can push them. So it's really in that, like, I can push a kid. And at the moment when when I can stop pushing and he's now running, that's when we see the most academic excellence and the strongest mental health, right? And so it's not like we have to trade these things. There is a different way where you can have both of these things. And I think that's what Prenda's all about, is inviting kids to own their learning and into a culture, both like an educational setting and system where there's like, there's like hard mechanisms in the learning system that either run on comparison and fear, or run on mastery and celebrating excellence. Like, there's not just one choice here. And there's lots of different ways to do things. So I think that just painting that picture, there's a way that you can have both of these things, and that just because we care about a child's mental well-being doesn't mean we don't care about their academic excellence and what they're able to do and their skills, all of that. It's that we aren't willing to trade the mental health and the relationship for that other thing, because we believe that when we prioritize that will come. And that's what we actually see in the data as well. Like, we have thousands of kids that have been through Prenda. We measure, we ask them questions about how they're feeling. It really comes down to their internal or external locus of control. And I'll just define that quickly if no one has heard of that. So it's just kind of your framing about where the locus or location of control lies. Is it inside you? Is it internal? When something happens, do you think, what am I going to do about this? Or if something happens, are you looking around thinking, who's going to solve this problem for me? You know, that's an external locus of control. I've done tons of research in this, and the literature shows clearly that an internal sense of control is tied to decrease anxiety, decreased stress, decreased depression, better like physical health, like heart health, and like lower levels of aggression, and better academic performance. So like, if you simply follow the data, all of us in the education world should heavily be prioritizing mental well-being, internal locus of control, because academics will follow from that. without force and without coercion and without fear. And then we can have the, utopia of like unicorns and rainbows of kids who like learning and are good at it. Call me crazy, but I've seen it happen.
Can we dig into the data a little bit more that you guys have collected? Because this is really interesting. I'm very curious to know what it sounds like you're asking the kids questions, and are you pairing that with test scores, or what are the data points that you're collecting that are allowing you to extrapolate these hypotheses or understandings about how your students are learning and what environments are most beneficial for them?
Yeah, for sure. So we definitely survey them. We definitely look at all their academic data. It's a little tricky. Like the scientist in me is like, this is not a perfect experiment, because we're also, on the other hand, not controlling everything, right? It's like, this is an independent microschool that is being run by a unique guide, and there's a unique set of parents and a unique set of kids in here. And you can't just treat each of those as if it's a petri dish and like look at it across the board, because like, well, this guide thought that it would be cool to bring this resource in, and this guide and these parents didn't want to test at all. And we're not here to say like what's right or wrong. We're here to provide a tool belt, resources, support. So then when we try to make these like judgment calls about the data and like what the effect of Prenda is, it's like, this is a very non-scientific way to look at this, because we're not controlling all the variables, right? But in general, what we see is when kids come in, about a third of them, we measure 4 different areas. Do they love learning? Do they have a good relationship? Will they tell you, I like school, or I think learning's fun, or are they super down on it? Kids will tell you. They are very honest, right? So that's the first thing, their love of learning. The second thing is their level of challenge. So there's a concept in education called the zone of proximal development. There's a lot of research that shows that if you can get a kid to be learning consistently at his zone of proximal development, which is kind of like that Goldilocks zone of like, it's not too hard, but it's not super easy either. It's like this right level of challenge where I could do it with a little bit of help or support, or like dozens of tries, like I'm at we call it their learning frontier is the term we use with the kids. And everyone, I can ask any Prenda kid, are you at your learning frontier in math? And they'll be like, no, or yes, right? And so we ask this question about their pre-Prenda experience, and we get kids from public school, charter school, private school, and homeschool, all saying, not at my learning frontier. About 2/3 of them will tell us it's too easy or too hard. And maybe a third are saying like, it's good, right? So if you look at the general approach to education, we have one teacher standing in front of a group of 25 or 30 kids who all have naturally different zones of proximal development or learning frontiers, right? But she can only have one sentence coming out of her mouth at the same time, which she has to deliver this state aligned and already decided, right? The district decided what textbook she was teaching from. Usually there's a script that she has to read because, these kids are 9 and we live in Minnesota, so this is my script for the day. It's kind of how teaching works. And then she's also legally responsible to differentiate her lessons so that she's hitting everyone's zones of proximal development, because the people that make these decisions know that that's the science. They also know that with our current situation, it's nearly impossible to actually do that, right? To age group kids and to dose them based on like whatever, like whoever decided like unit 3 of 4th grade science is whales. And then the teacher has to differentiate to be like, okay, well, you guys already know this math concept, so I'm going to like pull you aside in a group and kind of make this harder. You guys struggled through the whole 25 minutes I was teaching. You had no idea what I was talking about. So now I'm going to teach you on your level down here. And we are wasting so much time in the classroom. And it's like, yeah, that's one thing. Like I saw this firsthand. I was a speech language pathologist in public schools, like so much wasted time. That's one thing. That's a wasted childhood. And when you think that that child is forced by law to sit in that seat and to have their time wasted, and to not go outside and to not play until the streetlights come on, and to lose all of the other things that they could have been doing with that time if their learning if they had been met at their learning frontier and their learning was more efficient and effective, would have taken a third of the time. They wouldn't come away from the table with a fixed mindset saying either I'm a smart kid because I happen to be lucky and all of this is easy for me, or I'm a stupid kid because I am in the slow reading group, whatever. Like all of the damaging psychological effects that happens. Like the data is clear, yet we do nothing. And it's just like so mind-bogglingly frustrating to watch these kids struggle. And because I've seen what it's like on the other side, where my kids come home, this is their 6th year in their microschool, and I just actually had my kindergartner start. So all my kids are now in Prenda microschools, and it's amazing to watch these kids, especially like my older two who have been in microschools since kindergarten, 1st grade. And they'll come in and like our conversation does not sound like, is your homework done? Or why did you get a B+ on this test? It's like, hey, how's it going? Like, where are you in your math goal? And my son there's no grades. There's no one saying you'll get a sticker or like any form of extrinsic motivation. My son, who's 11, is just like, I just spent an hour and a half extra in my reading comprehension curriculum because I wanted to. I'm like, that's amazing. Great job. I don't give him a sticker. If he had said, hey, I am really struggling and I spent an hour doing this and I didn't get anywhere and I'm stuck, I would have said, that's amazing. Great job. Right? Because I don't want to reward his like winning. I want to reward his effort. And when we consistently reward and praise effort, that's where we get this culture change and this belief change in kids. It has to start with us though, right? Anyways, I'm on a very long rambly tangent about data. So that's their learning frontier, right? So we can get kids our spring 2024 survey just came in, and 80% of the kids are telling us now, like at Prenda, they're at their learning frontier. Still 10% too hard, 10% too easy. Those are like, there's no reason that number should not be 100% at Prenda. It drives me crazy, keeps me up at night. But 80% is pretty good because when going from 32% of kids feeling that way to 80% is a pretty dang good jump. So that's another one of our goals. So we've got love of learning and then challenge level. Do you want me to keep going?
Yes, please.
Okay. And then the next one is motivation. And on our surveys, we ask this question. How's it phrased? It goes something like, why do you do your learning? And then we ask them, because I don't want to get, the choices are, I don't want to get in trouble with my parents. I want to get good grades. I want people to think I'm smart. I don't want to get in trouble. So those are all like kind of fear-based extrinsic motivators. And then things like learning's fun and interesting. I have goals and I know that learning now will help me, like all intrinsic, like purpose, internal locus of control type things. And you just see this huge shift. The pre-survey is like, oh, everyone's learning for fear. And then the post-survey, like 80% of the kids are learning for internal reasons. We call this the Prenda effect internally. It's this like a switch that like after their first year, this like flips, and then we measure it every year that they're in Prenda and it doesn't go away. It's consistent. It's like their whole framing has been flipped.
So what is happening inside of your classrooms that's flipping that switch? Because that's huge. So many kids go through an entire education and never experience learning for learning's sake. What are you doing in practice that's shifting this often very deep-seated belief that learning has to be done because otherwise I'm going to be judged for it?
Or punished, kept in from recess, like all of those things.
Yeah, but not only undoing that, but then reseeding a more positive replacement, which is I'm doing this for me.
Yeah. Great news. This is so much easier than it sounds. All you have to do is stop doing all of the crummy stuff that we're doing already. Like 90% of solving this is just not doing. Like we do not do grades. We don't do any sort of comparison. We have every kid take an adaptive diagnostic test to see where they are in math and reading. And then we tailor their curriculum. They have a choice in curriculum that they make with their parents based on like our suite of tools that we offer. So there's flexibility in that. They can also bring a different curriculum if their parents are like, he's really doing well in this. Like, let's talk to the guide. Let's bring that in. The more the merrier. Welcome, welcome. And so this kid has gone from like, I have to be at a certain place or I have no value to anywhere I'm at is fine. And now I have a hopeful, supportive path to where I want to be, right? So on average, kids that come in and we have this goal setting process, our software tracks all of this data and their goals and tells them where they're at so that they can be accountable to themselves instead of having a teacher hand them a piece of paper 3 days after they did a math worksheet and says like, you only got 2 right. Like, I'm going to hold you accountable. It's like, what do you want? Right. They go through this goal setting process. We're very transparent with them with their data. We do not hide things from them at all. It's like, yeah, you are in 8th grade. And yes, you have 3rd grade grammar skills and that's not your fault. Okay, it's not your fault. And also, I've seen tons of kids go from 3rd grade grammar to the end of 8th grade in a year. Okay. And so can you. And so you paint this hopeful picture, you give them the tools and the resources and the support to get there. And then you let human nature take over, which is learning. Like kids love learning. Like no parent has ever said, I don't know how to get my 4-year-old to ask me why more.
That's the opposite of what they're asking.
Right. It's like, they're like, how do I get my kids to stop getting into everything? And we stop them from getting into everything when they're 4 by putting them in school when they're 5. And we teach them, we don't value people who get into things. We don't have time for your questions because there's already something that an adult that is smarter than you and knows best for you has put into place for you that you need to jump through in order for us to love you now. That's what we tell every 5-year-old who enters a classroom. And we don't do that. That sounds like so terrible. I don't think anyone is actually thinking those thoughts, but it only matters what is perceived by the child. And we don't know what's perceived by the child because nobody asks kids anything, right? And it's only when you start talking to kids and you see their tears and their stress come out where you're like, oh my gosh, like I need to spend every waking minute of my entire life making this better for them because they are suffering so hard. And it's like when you ask a kid, like, how's school? It's like, they'll be like, fine. And like, this word fine is our enemy. One, fine is not the goal. For my kids, I'm fine is not the goal. And actually, my husband and I have a thing that we use language very differently, my husband and I. And when he says he's fine, he is actually fine. He's actually great if he says fine. If I say I'm fine, I am not fine. Like I am dying inside, right? Like if I'm good, I'll be like, I'm awesome. Like it's all like shifted up, right? And so if a kid tells you they're fine, they're not. They're like running on the Kaity scale, not the Katie's husband scale. They're suffering. They just don't have the language and they've never met adults really that are like, oh, you're not fine? What's not fine? And let's go change that, right? Because we can't change school. We can't change that they get grades. We can't change all these things, right? We're stuck in these antiquated frameworks that are causing all of this stuff. So we really just have to like step away and just say, you know what? That was how we did school before. And we're going to do school in a different way. And wherever you're at is fine. And by saying that, and not fine, wherever you're at is completely like, I can wrap you up in love and acceptance, no matter what that like adaptive diagnostics test score says, right? It tells me you're 6 years behind in math. Awesome. Now we know where to start. And you have to believe that as an adult if you want the kid to believe that, right? So if you can get a guide to believe that, right, they can have these conversations, these goal-setting conversations with kids. And in the data, after a goal-setting conversation, most kids set a goal for 1.8 years of progress. So when we're saying, hey, that's like almost twice as much, right? If you look at the averages, Stanford did this interesting study about how effective each state was in moving kids through like a course level, like a like 4th grade. The best state in this is actually Arizona. They move people 112% through a grade level. Worst state is Florida, 88%, right? So if we can get kids, and the average is like just 1 year, right? It's under a year, right? A little bit. But if you come into Prenda a year or 2 behind on your adaptive diagnostic assessment at the beginning of the year, the average growth rate is 2 years of growth, right? That's the average. If you come into us, come into the Prenda program and you've had an IEP, you have a learning disability or something going on with you that makes it a little harder for you to learn than the norm, that growth percentage rate is 118%, which is 6% higher than the typically developing best state, right? So it's like, we're not doing anything magical though. Like we're literally just not doing things that are damaging. And then you give kids time and you wrap them up in acceptance and you provide a really strong model or example of someone who loves learning. And that's what we work on the most with our guides is like, you are the person who shows up Monday morning is like, oh my gosh, everyone come here. I found a bug. Like everyone come here. You have to see this. Like the wings are so beautiful. Like look at how crazy this is. Like, you know, or like I just watched the most fascinating documentary in my free time as an adult. I read this book and I'm learning this and I didn't know that. And I really struggled here. And then I like persevered and like you're narrating this life of growth mindset. And that when you have my favorite quote is Gordon Neufeld, a child's heart finds something to attach to and becomes like it. That is how learning happens. Learning does not happen by textbooks or grades or anything like that. We become who we who we value, right? If a parent really values the example of their parents, they're going to become like their parents. If that attachment, as it's called, is geared towards other 12-year-olds, other 15-year-olds who are cool, they're going to become like those other 12-year-olds and 15-year-olds. It's all about the heart of that child being attached to someone who's setting a really good example of lifelong learning. Because we've built this culture in schools, essentially, where all of the kids from the time they're 5 are in something called attachment void, where they aren't feeling connected to the adults in their life that are supposed to take care of them, right? Because they're away. We can go a whole rabbit hole about attachment, but I won't. So they get peer attached. This is a thing in attachment science. Gordon Neufeld is a person that you can look into there. He's my favorite. So they get peer attached, and then they start thinking like, what do you think is cool? Trucks? Cool. What do you think is cool? Like drugs? Cool. I think trucks are cool too. Like they just float around based on their peer attachments. And then it's like, oh, none of us think learning is cool. And none of us are attached to anyone who thinks learning's cool. So now learning's the enemy. And adults that want us to learn are also the enemy. And then we have these huge adversarial like relationships about like parents and teachers wanting one thing, kids have no interest in actually like rebelling against that because we're biologically predisposed to reject the ideas of people that aren't in our attachment village. So if you don't have a relationship with kids, good luck getting them to listen to you or to think what you think is important is important. Like, good luck to you. It will not work. And so that's why we spend so much time with guides, getting them to understand how to build relationships and how to build culture and how to model.
I'm really curious. There's a lot in here that's very interesting, but I'm really curious to dig more into. You've mentioned a couple of times the tools that students have available to them and that guides have available to them.
Sure.
So you mentioned that kids come into your classroom and they take a diagnostic test right off the bat. And then as a family, the student and their parents are choosing which academic path to move down. And so you're talking a lot about the culture that's happening inside of the classroom where the adult is modeling curiosity, they're modeling perseverance, they're modeling their interest in learning about things and what the process looks like for them. They're in a culture that is celebrating putting in the work, not just being successful in putting in the work, but the actual effort expended, whether or not success was attained, which I love. But you're also referencing these academic tools that kids have access to. So you're setting a culture, but then there's a curriculum that you've developed that they're working through. What does that actual academic curriculum look like? Because that's consistent across every location, right?
Yeah, for sure. So we don't see curriculum as like a subject thing. It's like very cross-curricular and it's very skill-based. So I'll just like kind of walk you through a Prenda day. They come in, they do something called Connect Mode where we run a program that we made up. It's called Prenda Camp. Camp stands for Community, Autonomy, Mindset, and Purpose. And in those like little 15-minute sit-downs, discussions, videos, activities, games, we develop community. We understand what autonomy is. We develop the skills of an empowered learner, which is the whole goal. Our mission is to empower learners. And so that's not a natural state obviously people are naturally curious, but kids don't come to you naturally able to manage their time towards a goal, to envision their future self. And this goes back to like a lot of neuroscience where like the part of your brain, like we want kids to be motivated by purpose, right? That's the P in camp. And if we want them to be motivated by purpose, they have to have this vision of their future self, right? Because then that's their purpose. But the brain's ability to project itself into time, to hold on to the idea that like my actions now affect me and others later, that's a prefrontal cortex skill. The prefrontal cortex doesn't start coming online in your brain until you're 7, and we start school at 5. Right? So there's this gap where we don't have this skill. But in the same way that we, like a lot of people, I tell a lot of people we start doing purpose work like when they're 5, right? And they're like, well, if they know anything about learning, they're like, they can't hold on to the future. How can you even have this conversation? And that to me is like saying like, well, a baby can't talk. So why do you talk to them? It's like, oh, no. Babies learn how to talk by being talked to. And kids learn purpose by being talked to about purpose and be having purpose, an adult in their life living a purposeful life and calling that out. That's how they learn purpose. And that purpose should be a table stakes expectation that they have out of life. And we've created generations of people who are fine living without purpose. And then when you look at the adult satisfaction, it's like 15% of people are like happy at work or whatever, like living their purpose, right? And like 85% of us are like, it's just like clock in, clock out, Netflix, repeat. Like we're just like numbing, and we're not healthy, and we're not excited to wake up. And we just really want to increase the percentage of people who wake up in the morning excited to do what they were built to do. And that has to start when they're real little, because we prep people for that cycle, right? In schools, drop off line, sit in your cubicle, fill out your worksheet, like clock out, have some Twizzlers, like go watch TikTok, right? Like we prep them for this adult life of dissatisfaction and meaninglessness. And that is why we have mental health issues everywhere. So it has to start at the beginning. It has to start with belief. It has to start with how we talk to kids. Anyways. That's the purpose of camp and connect mode, is to connect you with yourself, connect you with your guide, connect you with your community, connect you back to your family, your culture, who you are, and to help kids see their own greatness and to have the skills to execute on that greatness. Because now I have a growth mindset, a challenge mindset, a wonder mindset. I understand that things are going to get in my way and it's my job to overcome them. And I have, I can call on all of these resources, like all of these ideas that are not told to kids for a long, long time. We learn them in therapy when we're in our 30s. Actually. So we're getting ahead of that, I'll say. So that's camp mode. And then they go into something called conquer mode, which is where they do their self-paced, mastery-based academics. So a lot of these tools we just partner with. You can, there's tons of ed tech tools. I'll give you kind of like a 3-point like thing to look for in a tool. There's dozens of good ones. There's thousands of terrible ones. So look out for these ones. You want something to give you immediate feedback. That's a really important learning science skill. So we're getting away from the worksheet, submit, someone else grades it and gives it back to me 3 days later after my brain's moved on. That does not work for learning. It needs to have an immediate feedback loop where it's like, oh, I tried, I got something wrong, and then I was given immediate feedback that was wrong. So we're not like, this isn't like, sometimes it feels kind of woo-woo and squishy where we're like feelings and like relationships, like let's not focus on just the academic outcomes. But it's like, no, these kids are in rigorous, like deep learning mode all the time, like way more often than a traditionally educated student probably is. They're at the brink of their like frustration point constantly. I was actually just recording a video. My son is, he's 10. He's been in Prenda since he was a kindergartner. And he is recording this video because we're coming out with this new feature, which I'll tell you about. But he was recording a training video for all the other Prenda kids. And one of the pieces of this feature is like interviewing kids about their challenge level, right? And so I was talking to him about this, and in the video, he's like, you want your work to be challenging, like not crying on the floor all the time challenging, but like mostly crying challenging. And he's like, yeah, I feel like that all the time at school. And yet he loves going to school. Like we have to disconnect from this idea that like kids only like things that are fun and not easy. Like, look at how much kids play video games, right? It's like they will die thousands of times in a video game, persevere, try again. Like that loop is alive and well in video games, not alive and well in math, because they don't have that immediate feedback. They don't have a specific goal that they're running towards that they set, right? That's the second thing, is that they need to have a specific goal that they're working on that they set. And in our we link all this stuff. So like when you set an academic goal, you also set an academic purpose. Why are you doing math? And you have to type that into your goal like creation process. So every time you look at your goal, your purpose is staring you right back in the face. And if you're like, I thought I'd just watch cat videos today instead, your guide's like, that's such an interesting choice. How would your future self feel about that, right? Let's go look at your purpose. Are you disconnected from this purpose? Seems like you're not super worried about being an engineer today. That felt really important to you tomorrow. Would you like to put a different purpose in? Would we like to have this conversation? Not if you don't get your math done, you don't go to recess. Like, do you see how different that is? That like the conversation is open to find purpose. And it takes a lot of time. And in traditional school, we don't have time because we got to run on this curriculum schedule. In Prenda, and when you're off the beaten path, you have time to have these why conversations and to let kids really discover. They're not going to know it right away, obviously. Like this is, and every year I'm still learning math, but you know, my what I want to do with that math or why it's important to me, it changes, right? And we want to honor that process and help kids through that. So, math and reading, mastery-based, immediate feedback, goal that they set that is purposeful. And then they really need to have data transparency. I'd say that's the third thing. A lot of tools are built. When I say tool, I mean like an ed tech program that's delivering content, essentially. A lot of tools are meant to withhold information from kids so that teachers can evaluate it and then still judge the kids based on our old schema of how school works. So we like tools that are very transparent with kids about where they're at. If they got a wrong answer or right answer, giving them the feedback. So that's another thing we look like. We actually have an extensive rubric that we'll put a tool through to make sure that it's like the best of the best. But there's lots of great tools and kids are different. There's no one size fits all that's going to work for everyone, like including Prenda, right? Like Prenda is one schema for how you might run a microschool. There are probably a dozen or 100 great ways to do it. I think if we can get some of these underlying foundational belief questions, right? Like you can build a building 1,000 different ways on the same foundation and have that building like withstand the test of time, right? And be very useful. So we're not of the mind that only Prenda is the way to run a microschool. There are hundreds of really, really beautiful, authentic ways to do this. And we want to honor and encourage all of those because it comes down to parental choice and like what families are looking for and like their definition of success, right?
Are there any apps that you personally particularly love? Like, do you have a couple examples of favorite tools that you think are really, really solid?
Yeah. So for assessment, I love iReady. Like that's what we use. We've used the NWA map test in the past. Don't love it. It's kind of a dinosaur. I know most kids in the United States use that one. iReady is kind of like the second most used one. It's like really kid centric. It's like built like my daughter's actually at her microschool taking it right now. This is her second week of school, and she was like nervous about it. And I saw my other kids come in and they're like, no, it's so fun. Like every few minutes, there's like this cat stacking game that you get to play and like these breathing exercises built into it. And you have as long as you want. And like they were just coaching her. Like I was not giving her any test anxiety, be nervous about this cues, right? It is natural. Even if you're, you know, off the trails, these things still pop up. But they were able to like come nurture her and just like coach her out of that. And she like went to school happy to do it and she's excited and it's okay. So I like iReady. And then for math, I love a tool called Nori, but it just went out of business. Like they just shut it down. So that's really sad. Nori is my favorite. CTC math is a good one. We use Zern, and a lot of like traditionally schooled kids use Zern, but it hits all of those benchmarks. So it is a strong tool. It's not super adaptive. Oh, I didn't mention adaptivity. Like a tool like Alex is very smart, right? So like if you make a mistake in Alex math, it knows kind of based on what answer you gave, it knows what mistake you made, and it will like decrease your mastery and give you another lesson. It's like, oh, looks like you knew that last week, but we need to circle back. So it's like a very actively nurturing your mastery. It's a very smart. Zern's not like that. It's like a straight shot through second grade. It hits most of the things, but it's not as adaptive. So lots of little things like that you got to look for. Lexi is our favorite for ELA. I'll just leave it at that.
I've heard a lot of people love Lexia. It comes up often. I'm really curious what the modeling looks like from a guide in a classroom around building this excitement around not just curiosity, but the actual academic work. Because there is a difference between seeing a bug on the ground and saying, oh my gosh, everybody has to see this right now. It's so cool, versus saying, oh, I have to sit down and do an hour and a half of Lexia. I'm so excited. It's a different beast. It's less obvious to kids. There might be more associations around, oh no, worksheets, computer, focus time, scary.
Yeah.
how do you, if you're not rewarding accomplishment, you're rewarding effort.
I'm actually not rewarding anything, right? It's like the only rewards involved in this situation are like adult attention. Right. So
Okay,
that's
so-
where we're saying like, this is valuable to me because my face is doing this excited look and I'm not doing like one of these or talking in this tone of voice to you. Right. It's like very relationship driven.
So what does it actually look like? Can you paint a picture of a student's coming into a Prenda classroom? Maybe it's their first year as a Prenda student and they have a lot of negative associations around doing their schoolwork. And somehow you're creating a culture where they're exceeding the performance of the students in the best academic state in the country. What are the things that are happening in the classroom? What are the interactions that they're having on a daily basis, especially early on, that make this very dramatic shift for them?
Yeah. So it has to do with relationship, which we talked about, but relationship is intrinsically tied to neuroscience, to the brain, and to getting the learning centers and the motivation centers of the brain running in the right direction, right? So when kids who have, like, I'll call it like school lowercase t trauma, they have negative associations, they have limiting beliefs that like it causes anxiety, it causes them to go into fight, flight, or freeze, right? It activates their nervous system to be asked to learn, right? That is our enemy. We want kids to be able to feel safe and calm when they're learning. And that's when their prefrontal cortex is online and that they can actually experience success in academics. And I'll also add behavior. Like you can't sit still and listen if your prefrontal cortex is off, if you're in fight, flight, or freeze. Like it's very difficult to manage yourself, especially when those skills are already pretty much not developmentally appropriate to ask of a 5-year-old, 6-year-old, whatever, even a 12-year-old. So what does it look like? These kids come in to these microschools and we do our darndest to help that guide understand the importance of something called unconditional positive regard, where it's like, no matter where they've been, no matter what their behavior is like on day one, your face is bright and cheery and your tone of voice, sorry, I'm gonna cry, like is constantly communicating that you like them. That's all you have to do is convince them that they're liked. Isn't that sad that that's like the threshold? But that's what they've been missing. Because if you're, even if you can sit still and behave, like if you're getting a C- in a math class, that teacher talks to you different than they talk to your friend who gets all A's. And you know that. You can't maybe tell an adult or like have the language to express that, right? But you feel that intrinsically. And so if you're like, oh, I walk into this microschool and I just took an adaptive diagnostic test that says that we're 3 years behind in math and everyone knows that, but all of the adults are like, great, we're so jazzed you're here. That takes the nervous system and just calms it right down because their value is no longer at risk, right? So it becomes less scary. A lot of the like being the class clown or being a bully, like all of these things are defense mechanisms at not feeling valued. So if we can help kids feel like, at Prenda, it's okay. Like we're all running our own race. And like when your friend even says like, oh, like, yeah, I started there too when I was in Prenda. Like I was, like you can get a little peer like support and be like, oh, this is actually normal. And it's very normal for kids to come into Prenda below grade level because we are not taking a master-based approach in that classroom, right? We're not looking at the nitty-gritty. Do they know this now? It's like, yeah, we passed it on the unit test at 70% and then we moved on. We really didn't master this skill. So we go back and we're unearthing all that. And it's incredibly painful, right? It's incredibly painful to parents too. It's scary to see those results. And it's easy to be like, oh, just a bad test day. It's like, probably not really just a bad test day. Like we probably just have learning gaps and it's so socially terrifying to have learning gaps because being smart means we're valuable, that it's really hard for us to look at that. So we have to get that right, that we are not even fazed by someone who's 3 years below because we've seen kids do that in 1 year and we can get back on track. And I kind of bristle at all of those words. Can we get back on track? Because on track makes it sound like there's a place that you should be. And so in Prenda, we use the phrase on track, but it's all in context of the goal that the student has set, not some arbitrary timeline like, well, you're 9, so you should be here. You're not on track to someone else's judgment of you. You're on track to where you started, and we are setting goals based on what's reasonable, like a reasonable expectation of growth. And then like in those conversations, it's like, yeah, I think it would be really reasonable if you moved a grade level. You know, if you really wanted to go above and beyond here, you could do 1.5 grade levels. And then kids like, they're like, wait, the C- student, have an opportunity here to be moving farther and faster than anyone's ever given me credit for. They're like, yes, if you're telling me that I have a hopeful path forward to doing that, I want to be that kid. I've always wanted to be that kid, and I've never been able to be that kid before. And then you couple that with like, and also, guess what? We don't need you to be that kid to love you and like you and to be glad you're here, right? Which is what their nervous system really needs in that moment. So that's kind of what those interactions look like. I hope I answered your question.
No, you did. There's this sort of duality that exists in organization or schools that have a higher level of performance than your sort of standard institutional public school. There are two types of schools that tend to get outsized results and high test scores. One is what you're describing. It's a school that's highly alternative. It's highly focused on the intrinsic motivation of the kid and their sense of excitement about learning so that they can drive the process. And then there's almost the polar opposite, which is the type of school that's super authoritarian in its structure. It has a lot of rules and expectations and parameters, and it's not necessarily unkind to the child, but it's very strict in its set of values and the things that it's striving towards and its expectations for the child. And both of these types of schools tend to perform far better just from a purely academic standpoint than your average public school. And I'm really curious what you think about that, because you're on one side of this spectrum, and on the opposite side, there are also models that are getting very high academic results, but with a very different underlying philosophy. And I'm really curious what your take is about this duality and about the other version of this, where people are much more authoritarian about also getting high results. I'm really curious to hear your thoughts about this. I imagine you have a lot.
So they get high-performing short-term results is what I would add. We're not going out 30 years, 40 years and saying this person chooses to learn in their free time. And that's the game that we're playing. We're playing a very long harvest game where it's like, we stop measuring K through 12 education when someone gets into college, or like look at their ACT score or something. It's like, we're building a person. And that person exists far beyond their graduation date, right? Or they're going to college. And so I always ask is like the determining factor of is someone a lifelong learner? What do they do in their free time? When you take a kid out of that like high pressure situation where they're performing really well, you say you can do whatever you want for a week. What do? They're not going to be doing learning. They're going to be rebelling against what they're made to do, because that's human nature. The Prenda kid will keep learning. Like I have learning tool companies call me and say, hey, we think there's like something weird going on the data. Like we see that your school has ended, but we still see 80% of your kids are active. It's like, yeah, they just love learning. They're just at home learning. It's crazy, right? It's like, so like that to me is like compounded. Like, and if you take every moment that the human is going to be alive and get to like choose what they're going to do with their time, that is when it matters that they chose to do it and that they understood that like they had a goal, they could move themselves forward towards their goal. And I think it is also just like a foundational like construct of what we value. Like, do we value that? Like, it's almost like a social signal. It's like, great, I got this ACT score. Like I went to Yale. Like those are social signals that last your whole life, right? So you can make that argument. But I think like the world that we're living into, like I don't know if my math's quite right on here, but the kids that are going into kindergarten this year, it's like they will enter their prime earning years in like 2060 something. Like, we don't know if a Yale thing is going to matter then. Like, I think the world's shifting away from that, right? Like towards like, oh, can you, and I met someone at Prenda who hires a lot of people. And like, I've looked at a lot of resumes, and not once have I ever looked at any of those signaling factors. I only look at, show me your work and show me how you interact with people and show me your values. Those are the only things that I evaluate when I'm hiring in this world, right? And I think the world is going more and more that way. So I think we need to shift our educational practices and our parenting practices more towards like personhood development. Because if you look at youth mental health, adult mental health, everything, it's just like the data is screaming that we're not doing the right things, but maybe we just do these things harder is essentially what we're saying. Not working.
Kaity, this has been fascinating. This has been really fun. This has been a really great view inside of not even just like the philosophy of Prenda, but the day-to-day of what the student experience is like, which is fascinating because it's so different from the norms of what people think about when they think about what an education ought to be. If people are not ought to be, rather, but is expected to be. Like, it's so different from what people think of when they think of an education. If people are interested to know more about Prenda, or they want to know more about you're a podcast host, you're active on various social media platforms, where would you send them next to learn more?
Sure. So Prenda.com has everything that you're going to need, including that Start My Microschool button. It also goes through a learning model with like videos of, I didn't even get to finish. The other parts of our day are called Collaborate and Create. We're doing project-based learning, interactive, like Socratic discussions and debates and things like that. So, but you can learn more about that on the website. And then to follow Prenda on social is at PrendaLearn, PRENDALEARN. And then to find me specifically, on Instagram, I am Kaity_for the kids. And I just talk about parenting and how we can show up for our kids and for our students in loving, meaningful ways that still invite them into a life of excellence and meaning. I also talk a lot about literacy. That's my other kind of side hobby. Yeah, those are the ways.
Which we didn't even have a chance to get into, but at some point you and I have to chat about literacy stuff too.
Yeah, for sure. That would be so fun.
This is a big one.
Definitely.
Kaity, thank you so much for taking the time to do this. This was really fun.
Yeah, thank you so much. It was so fun.
We'll chat more soon. All right, my friends, that is a wrap for today. Thank you so much for listening to today's episode. I hope that you found this valuable. Please leave a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify. Please like the video on YouTube. And please don't forget to subscribe on whatever platform you listen to make sure that you don't miss next week's episode. Thank you so much, friends. I will see you next week.